call is now being recorded.
Hey, Jason, are you there?
Yes, sir.
This is Steven there, and this is Jason Silva. Thank you so much for making time, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me, Steven. I appreciate it.
Would you mind giving us a description of what it is that you're doing on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I kind of describe myself as a digital media artist, and I play with all kinds of media, and I sample and remix media and ideas to create content that hopefully helps people dissolve boundaries of thought and see the world in a new way. I think if media is a drug, we have the choice to make it into a drug that helps us dissolve boundaries in our thinking rather than a drug that stupefies us. You know, all too often we call content programming because it programs our minds, which I totally understand, but I think we have a responsibility to make content that orients and programs our minds and our attention towards spaces of introspective contemplation, probing the adjacent possible, thinking about big ideas. And this is my passion, and this is, I think, is my responsibility. I host a television show on National Geographic Channel called Brain Games, which is about neuroscience and perception. And my passion project is a digital series called Shots of Awe, AWE, Shots of Awe, which I do with Test Tube Discovery Digital Networks, and got a YouTube channel. I also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Jason L. Silva, where I post a lot of my mixed media content. But again, it's really about using digital technology to electrify thoughts and share thoughts at the speed of light. That's the goal, that's the responsibility. Make people think differently, inspire the world.
And your videos are having visceral responses. People come away from your videos, even the short ones, the ones that are like a minute and a half, transformed in how they're thinking about several central issues. Philosophy, technology, how it's changing our life, and you seem to be a huge proponent and popularizer of the ideas behind geometric progress and the singularity.
Yes.
How did you
definitely
come across these ideas, man?
I think driven by my own existential anxiety, you know, about what it means to be a sentient mind that can contemplate the Big Bang and the origins of the universe, and that we are a meta superorganism, you know, built out of atoms that were created in the furnaces of stars, and at the same time dealing with the fact that we are mortal beings. So this idea that we're simultaneously gods and worms is at the crux of the human condition, and it pushes me towards a place of seeking out better explanations for what we might become. The idea that we're ultimately food for worms is just way too depressing for me, so I'm looking for other alternatives. And the fact that I did not find those in religion or in humor has led me to a place of technology and philosophy, where we use technology to address the grand challenges of humanity and overcome our boundaries, and we use philosophy to make sense of the ways in which we overcome those boundaries and what it means for the future of what it is to be human.
And you have a degree in philosophy, is that true?
Yes, sir. I went to University of Miami in 2001 to 2005. I majored in film and philosophy, double major. Since I left Miami, I lived in Los Angeles for 5 years. I've lived in New York for 3.5 years, but I'm often on the road as well, giving a lot of speeches and a lot of keynotes to technology companies like IBM and Google and Qualcomm and Intel. I come in a lot of their company summits and talk about the future.
One of the most amazing speeches at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, We Are the Gods Now.
Yes, people love that one.
What an amazing talk. We're there, aren't we? We're, you know, within a lifetime of being there. These almost godlike powers of technology and possibility. And you pepper all of your discussion with very literary references, philosophical references, some poetry. And your style seems to be very influenced by spoken word. Have you ever participated in spoken word? Or
I have not, because I've tried to find a way of using media to create, in a way, my own genre. And there's definitely a lot of influence there from stand-up philosophers like Timothy Leary and Terence McKenna, who would get up on stage and just wax rhapsodic in a kind of freestyle philosophy format about their ideas, where all they were really doing is paraphrasing and rehashing what they wrote about in their books, but they were doing it without a script and they were doing it on stage, lending it a freestyle quality. Freestyle rappers, I think, also engage in the same kind of pattern recognition and flow state and then lateral thinking when you kind of connect the dots in real time and in new ways. It is definitely like a kind of mental gymnastics. And certainly there's a spoken word quality to it as well. But no, I have not like gone to spoken word type of gatherings because I'm not interested in being put in a certain category. I wanted Shatava to be its own thing. I wanted it to be its own format, its own genre, its own thing. I'm into the notion of just inventing emotion transmission devices and using the media at my disposal to do it.
Well, it's so evident, and you're a filmmaker, and your kind of mastery of the short form and the ultra short form. I mean, you have moments of real philosophic satori going on in these videos.
Bro. Yeah, you're right.
And I can't even imagine, or I can't even explain to you. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen people reduced to tears that they cannot explain as a result of listening and watching your videos. Is that common? Do you hear that a lot?
I love you for saying that, man. I've heard it. Yeah, I mean, let me give you an example. When I spoke in Australia and I did that talk, We Are the Gods Now, that talk actually was at a conference called Dangerous Ideas. And people attended this event the way they would attend a concert. They bought tickets, they came to talk to, listen to rock star intellectuals share their musings. And afterwards, there was like autograph signing, again, like in a concert. And I went to say hi to some fans, and a couple of people embraced me, and one of the women started to cry. She gave me a hug and she started to cry. She said she was profoundly moved by some of the ideas, which I thought, of course, there's a moment of radical empathy in that moment when you feel somebody being felt so intensely, and it's a very moving moment for sure. I had a similar experience in Las Vegas when I keynoted at CES for Intel, and what looked like a 65-year-old man came over to me afterwards and started to cry as well. So I definitely seen that happen at some of my live events. Yeah.
What do you think is behind that?
I think a combination of the juxtaposition, right? So there's a lot of cerebral ideas presented in I think a romantic, humanistic way, that you can feel, like you said, there's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of philosophy, even as I'm talking techno-jargon, so to speak. So even if you're not a technologist, I think you can relate to the framing and the metaphors that I use, perhaps. I mean, I use myself as a barometer, right? So when I'm speaking, I'm really speaking to myself. I'm sort of like trying to bring into my frontal lobe in as organized fashion as possible a stream of ideas and try to cohere them into this like montage, so to speak, montage of words and images. So it's very much like a freestyle exercise, but you're self-monitoring as you go. You're adjusting your cadence as you go, depending on where your stream of thought flows to. And so I think, maybe people witnessing all of those qualities together creates a powerful effect. I'm a big believer in the power of how I use the package. I'm a big believer in the power of aesthetics. The presentation matters, and certainly having a sensitivity and a sensibility to presentation and aesthetics, I think, probably influences how I come across in the videos.
Yeah, I think, the future is always imbued with magic. I mean, there's something magical about the future, whether it's dark or light magic, where you're either inspired or we're terrified by it, which is, technology seems to be that dark and light inspiration. All of us talk about futures now. Yeah. But I think when you speak, you take this magic thing and you make it possible for people to imagine themselves experiencing.
Yeah. So Moore's Law is a term coined by Gordon Moore, who was a co-founder of Intel, which of course is a semiconductor company. And his law was based on an observation of the rate at which semiconductor chips accelerated in progress. Like they got cheaper, they got smaller, and they got more powerful. And what he found was that there was an exponential curve. And exponential growth is magical because it's like compounding interest. It's one of those things where at first it's baby steps, but those baby steps are compounding, and all of a sudden they become huge overnight. So if you take 30 linear steps and you do it linearly, you get to 30. If you take 30 exponential steps, you get to 1 billion. And that's a big difference, right? Linear steps, get to 30, somewhat. Exponential steps get to 1 billion. So when you realize that technology is evolving exponentially, it throws out of whack our capacity to make inferences about the rate at which things change. So things change faster, and that speed telescopes. It just gets faster and faster and feeds on itself exponentially. And so that's where the notion of Moore's law comes from, and it's being used now as a mathematical principle to be able to invent with future technologies, make predictions to measure out and scale the way in which these technologies will improve over time. And so it basically tells us that the world and our capacity to change the world is accelerating at a rate that is hard to wrap our heads around. And that's why we live in disruptive times. That's why software is eating the world. That's why the computer in your pocket today is 1,000,000 times cheaper, 1,000,000 times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than what used to be a $60 million supercomputer that was half a building in size 40 years ago.
And and that's not something that's just happened up until now. That's going to continue forward until we are talking molecule-sized computers.
It's been remarkably consistent. In fact, before technological evolution, we saw exponential growth in biological evolution. The speed which, single-celled organisms clumped into multicellular organisms took a lot longer than multicellular organisms turning into early animals. And then it got faster and faster. And then humans, we've only been here 100,000 years. And then we invented the wheel, and then, language, and then technology, and, it just keeps getting faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, and which kind of leads us to a discussion of transhumanism. Jason, I'm a real fan of history. And, I was trying to think of what would be kind of a parallel to what you do. Because you take ideas that are kind of out there, people know about them, educated people do, and then you synthesize them, and you create a world of possibility that you can recognize immediately as possible.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, it's very much like Voltaire. And he took the ideas of the Enlightenment, synthesized them in such a way that pretty much set that century on fire with those ideas.
Yeah.
And they changed the world. They brought democracy and science and reason and education to every single one of the places touched by that culture.
Yeah.
And I wonder, what is your end game on this when you are doing these things?
You just said it, right? I mean, it's to awaken us to our common ecstasy, to use media to create more empathy, right? Because empathy rarely extends beyond our line of sight. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So if you can expand what people can see, if you can dissolve their boundaries of thought, if you can dissolve their patterns of thinking, if you can make them see the world in a new way, like you've expanded their mind. And once the mind is stretched by a new idea, it never returns to its original position. So we're all in a propaganda race in the attention economy to see what are the ideas that are going to shape this decade and this century, And so to be a player in that is a wonderful creative ambition I think anybody has. Anybody who paints or writes music or writes books or shares blogs wants to inform the thoughts of others, or at the very least, stimulate the thoughts of others. So I suppose the end game is for shots of art to resonate with as many people as technology allows. Why not, right?
And be there right in the center of it. And you are in the center of it. You've met and you've spoken with the people responsible for the ideas. You have spoken with Kurzweil. You've spoken with many of the people responsible for this set of ideas that, taken together, are more profound than anything we've ever had in our history.
Precisely.
Maybe
I've
as profound as the wheel.
I've met and chased down many of these people because they're endless inspiration for me, and I wanted to thank them.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful turns of phrases that I think I've ever seen, and you've repeated in several of your videos, is imagine if the technology for oil painting or music had not been developed in time for the genius of Mozart or for Van Gogh. And so imagine what new possibilities are around the corner from the new technologies we're developing.
It's a visual metaphor. It's a perfect analogy because it's hard for the mind to conceive of what's inconceivable. But using an example of something transcendent like music is said to be ineffable. Music is almost inconceivable until you've experienced it. So if you tell people that music, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is a piece of technology, and you say, imagine if the world didn't have that, how sad it would be. That's a very good way to get people thinking about, well, imagine then what might come next.
Well, and it decouples the idea of technology as simply the tool of money, doesn't it? And it puts it back onto technology can also be the tool of inspiration and humanity.
Yeah, I mean, dude, language is a technology, and without language, the mind wouldn't know what it's thinking.
Yeah, it's literally rhapsodic, and it's breathtaking the way that
Yeah.
you're able to explain that and resynthesize those ideas.
A sort of byproduct about how my brain works. I think that my brain, I grew up in Venezuela. I speak Spanish. I speak English, both fully bilingual. So I think in something that's sort of feels like it's outside of either language, right? And so I'm not sure how that changes the brain, but I know that it does. I mean, there's been a lot of research about bilingual people and multilingual people have a more fluid kind of creativity because they're privy to multiple worldviews, because language scripts thought. You can only think within the boundaries of the language that you speak. And so if you speak languages, and of course language is informed by culture and beliefs and stereotypes and all these things. So again, language sculpts thought, language sculpts mind. But imagine somebody who speaks two languages and inhabits two cultures. I also studied at international school. So I had friends from Israel and Nigeria and this and that. So that requires you to model minds that are very different from your own. Because when you meet somebody, you're modeling their mind, and that is when you're creating a model of their mind in your mind, an estimation of what their inner world is based on what you're seeing and when you're picking up on. And the accuracy of your modeling of their mind is what determines how you approach them. And if you're able to make a connection with that person, it means that you've effectively modeled their mind well enough to establish intersubjectivity, to share subjectivity with them. So imagine my experience, since high school, to be modeling minds that were from all parts of the world and being forced to make models in my head of what these people's experiences were like and where they were from and what growing up was like for them. Again, it stretches the range of all possible thoughts that you can have. So you bring that and then you bring a multilingual upbringing together, and then you have a mixed media, a love of videos, short-form content, social media, sharing these thoughts, a love of technology, philosophy. I mean, all these things working together instruments the way my brain thinks.
And so that process, that just comes from you sitting down doing it.
And you can quote me on that.
Yeah. So I was recently discussing one of the foremost dance theory and choreography figures in the world, Christina Teague-Mann. And she is
Say that again. Sorry?
Christina Teague-Mann. And she's also a fan of your work. And I know she had real resonance in the idea of all of those different paradigms kind of being overlapped and interwrapping, and that now it's possible for us to kind of intermeme each other.
Yeah.
Especially in dance. Like we not only meme and create memes, but that becomes its own verb. And when you have dancers who speak a non-physical language, many non-physical languages, and being able to transmit that via YouTube that were just impossible even 10 years ago, that it's transforming the way that people perceive and can understand and appreciate dance. And so there's real resonance for me in the power of technology to transform culture and art. And I know
1,000%.
What do you think it's going to be like for you? And what do you think are the changes in the human condition that we'll be able to see in 2025?
Yeah, well, I think what Kurzweil and all these people talk about the most is just radical advances in biotech and healthcare, right? So if you think of biology as software, biotechnology is mastering the information processes of biology. So once we can upgrade our biology the way we upgrade iOS on our iPhones, we'll be able to create software patches to alleviate illnesses, software patches to condition our genes to move away from certain diseases, software patches even for aging itself. I mean, there's a reason that the Google guys are getting into the life sciences with their company Calico, California Life Extension Company. So I think there's going to be radical transformation in the way that we can have personalized health care, medical preventative interventions at the genetic level, at the molecular level. And that's what's really exciting, because I think the Holy Grail is to cure this whole thing about aging. When human beings stop aging, when aging becomes something variable that we can control, that'd be great. Because then we move into a space where sentience, which is the most wonderful thing in the universe, self-awareness, is no longer housed in a rotting vessel, but we can actually salvage subjective worlds, salvage all of our minds, and that's what we need to do.
In 2005, Facebook was really on the radar of most people, and social media has transformed the way that two generations of human beings interact and communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to remember just how much daily stress there was in trying to figure out and track where your close ones were.
Oh,
When I grew up, how you knew it was time to go home was you could hear your mom in the backyard 3 blocks down screaming.
Of course. I remember.
And cell phones and texts have changed all that. So,
yeah.
You can lie in a more sophisticated way, but you can also be kind of check in that you're okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and the world has changed. And so you think that's going to be the biggest thing is biotech.
Yeah, it's also the most pressing thing, man. I mean, people should not be dying of cancer, in an age where we fly 100,000 airplanes through the sky, or where you and me can communicate wirelessly, and collapsing space-time as our minds intermingle with meme exchanges, it's the miracles that we take for granted coexist with people dying of cancer. That's not acceptable. Also, people shouldn't be starving. People should not be starving. Poverty, the whole thing. Like, biotechnology could solve poverty. We could solve the starvation issue. We could do in vitro meat. We could grow all the meat that we need in tissue engineering with stem cells from a cow and never kill another animal and feed the world. The fact that this stuff is not, scaling yet, that's a problem, and it needs to.
I mean, and I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're pressed for schedules, and God knows it was quite the journey getting to where we could be on the same phone line at the same time.
I know, but it's been wonderful, brother.
Dude, I feel the same way totally. Am I missing something? Is there something I should be asking you that you know that I am not aware of? What would you say?
No, I would say, look, I think we all want to make a ripple. We all want to, impact others, share compassion, share creativity. That's everybody. Everybody is creative at heart. Everybody's trying to share, trying to communicate, trying to reach out, even to one person, And I think that this is what this media is all about. Shots and Vibes is about sharing curiosity, sharing wonderment, sharing beauty, reminding us about what matters. And I think all too often we get distracted. Sometimes it's not our own fault, into routines that are deadening. And I'm just trying to wake people up.
This is Stephen Dare and Jason Silva